Redeemer, and Sustainer. Amen. He was the very last person I spoke to before moving away to seminary, and he was holding a drill. So what's with the Connecticut plates? The mechanic at the mobile station wanted to know. You moving? I was surprised by his question. He had serviced my car for about 6 years, but we had never spoken much. He was sitting on the garage floor, drilling out the remnants of 2 rusted bolts that had snapped only minutes before, when I'd attempted to remove the Massachusetts plates from my truck. Yeah, I'm moving to New Haven. I didn't offer him much. I wasn't sure I wanted to have the seminary conversation with him on this busy afternoon. So he continued drilling. Why New Haven? Well, I began, I'm going to be at Yale. Yale, he said, peering at me. Are you a teacher? I gave in. No, I'm starting seminary at the Divinity School there. My bishop is sending me there. I'm preparing for ordination as a priest in the Episcopal Church. He stopped drilling. The Episcopal Church? I'm an Episcopalian, he said. I love the Episcopal Church. He had my complete attention by now. You do? Why? I want to know. Now, if the Archangel Gabriel had fluttered down out of the sky, sat on top of the emissions testing console, and raised his right finger, I could not have been more curious to hear what was coming next. The mechanic looked directly up at me from where he was working on the floor. Well, that church saved my life. About 4 years ago, right after 9/11, my wife left me. She took off with a guy she had met online in a chat room. After 23 years, she does this. We have 2 kids. I thought my life was over. He went on. I think the worst part was I was so ashamed. Like I was garbage. Like used goods. I couldn't talk to anyone about this. I just kind of ended up at this church because it was in my neighborhood. He named a church that I recognized 2 towns over, and a rector whom I had once met at a diocesan meeting. It's a small church, the church the mechanic named. I think it was at the time a struggling church. Its rector, an unassuming sort of person. He really helped me figure out what had happened, said the mechanic, about this rector. He helped me figure out that all that pain I was in, just the fact that I still loved my wife, wasn't something I had to be ashamed about. I was suddenly aware that the other men working in the garage around us had stopped talking and joking with each other and had grown silent. A respectful sort of silent as they continued their work. I understood that I was being let in on a story that they, of course, all knew. I understood, too, that they had walked with this man through the breakup of his marriage. The mechanic finished drilling out both old, rusted bits of bolt. Where are those plates? I'll put them on for you. The thing is, he concluded as he screwed the Connecticut plates onto my fender, the thing is, the people in that church helped me get to a place where I could pray. Not just for me, but for my wife. After a while, it wasn't even for her to come back to me. It was more like I just wanted things to be good for her. You take care. Good luck down there, he said. He wouldn't let me pay him. Now, the birth of Jesus the Messiah took place in this way. We come this morning to Advent 4, the very last Sunday in our progression towards Bethlehem. And we've also entered year A, the year of Matthew's Gospel. Whereas Luke begins telling this story with Mary's experience, Matthew gives us this interlude with Joseph, the foster father of Jesus. One way of looking at these weeks we've been moving through together, then, is as a progression of personalities. First, the prophet Isaiah, to John the Baptist, to Mary, and this morning, to Joseph. The saint some traditions identify as the worker. Now, the Gospels don't really fill in many of the blanks when it comes to the life of Joseph. Matthew and Mark tell us that he was a tekton. Tekton, Greek for skilled craftsman. A mechanic, maybe. Later, Christian tradition portrays him as a carpenter, as much older than Mary. For a saint, Joseph doesn't speak very much. In fact, comb through each of the four Gospels, and you won't find anything from Joseph in direct quotes. Joseph is more the strong, silent saint. He's the patron saint of exiles and immigrants because of his family's flight into Egypt. Of course, he's the saint of carpenters. But he's also, because of this morning's reading from Matthew, the patron saint of men and women who doubt and hesitate. The patron saint of those who, like my mechanic, are drawn into circumstances that signal the end of life as they have known it, and the start of something new and uncertain and potentially terrifying. In other words, Joseph is the patron saint of many of us. Now, the birth of Jesus the Messiah took place in this way. In medieval nativity plays, Joseph was often portrayed as sloppily dressed and sometimes even asleep, while Mary and the baby bask in the adoration of the Magi or the shepherds. In Burgos, Spain, once, a cathedral guide pointed out to us that the lantern Joseph was hoisting in a manger scene was actually a beer mug. In a way, he's the medieval ancestor of a character we know from TV shows like Married with Children or The Simpsons or The Family Guy. The dopey, appetite-driven dad. If satellite dishes and HD TVs and reclining armchairs and ESPN had been available to the medievals, they would certainly have found their way into these stock images of the birth of Jesus, the Messiah. But consider for a moment what Joseph is facing this morning in Matthew's Gospel. Joseph lives in a culture where honor and purity are supreme values, where rational logic would clearly indicate that his betrothed has not honored her commitment to him. Nothing is as he thought it would be. His initial attention to dismiss Mary quietly is one that would protect his honor, even at the cost of consigning Mary to ostracism, or maybe even death by stoning. The world's logic would have it this way. The world's logic would have Joseph act to protect his righteousness, his reputation. It's Joseph's faithfulness that leads him in a different direction altogether. He forgets about his reputation. Reputation. That thing Rhett Butler once told Scarlett O'Hara that was something people with courage could do without. Joseph forgets about his reputation and does as the angel commands him. He takes Mary as his wife. With no solid ground under his feet, Joseph manages to reject shame and fear and the idol of his own reputation. He begins to live a life for which no prior experience has prepared him. Now, the birth of Jesus the Messiah took place in this way. If God is love, Joseph has managed to add an incalculable amount to the total volume of love at work in a harsh and unforgiving world. He doesn't say much. He doesn't say anything, actually. But in carbon emissions terms, Joseph leaves a big love footprint. Perhaps that's why, as Christmas approaches, I've been remembering the last time I saw my mechanic. I've been remembering the faith community that taught him a new way to pray. After a while, he told me it wasn't even for her to come back to me. It was more like I just wanted things to be good for her. My mechanic might still be living out an identity as damaged goods, as an abandoned mate. But he managed to find his way into a community where love took his hand, where his reputation as husband and father was secondary to his being a beloved child of God's, to his being a channel of that love. What had seemed to him to be the end of everything became the start of a new way of living and loving and praying. Now, the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, took place in this way. You know, there is a word often applied to Mary in hymnody. A word we know from Matthew's Sermon on the Mount that this morning seems to attach to Joseph as well. The word is meek. Meek. In Greek, praise. In the scriptural sense, meekness is not timidity or passivity. Instead, it's the deliberate restraint of the self in order to make space for the thoughts and energies and initiatives of others. Meekness, in this sense, is not being a doormat. Meekness is more strength under control. Strength under control. Strength in the service of divine love. An opting out of willfulness. In Joseph's story this morning, it's his willingness to risk status and reputation for the sake of the new. This unlikely and possibly scandalous ministry that his wife has taken up. Augustine reminds us that God is always trying to give us new things. Only our hands are often too full of the cares of this world to accept them. So the Advent question for us, as we think about this silent saint, this foster father of the world's Redeemer, might go something like this. Are you holding on to a certain idea of yourself that is preventing love from taking your hand? That is preventing your life from opening? That it is impeding a future opening for you? Is your grip preventing Jesus from being born again in you? Finger by finger in this coming new year. May we open our hands to accept all that God is calling us into next Now the verb